In 2030, San Diego still pretended to be sunlit and innocent, even as its elegant homes cast shadows over the sea cliffs of La Jolla, and the old money retreated behind gated estates. The Halstead family had once been part of that old money, the sort whose name opened doors before it was spoken. Richard Halstead had built his fortune in shipping logistics, a quiet empire that moved goods through Pacific ports, while politicians congratulated themselves on balanced trade. To the public, he was a model husband and philanthropist. To his elder son Kingston, he was something else entirely. When the divorce court found old man Richard guilty of an affair with a junior associate, consensual, discreet, but undeniable, San Diego society gasped as one. Newspapers spoke of moral collapse. Richard's wife, Eleanor, did not speak at all. She simply moved into the guest house and stopped attending charity dinners. She was never seen in public again. Only one person smiled.
Kingston Halstead, 22 and freshly graduated from Stanford Law, sat in the courtroom and watched his father's reputation collapse with the faintest sense of justice. Kingston said to anyone who asked, "A man is what he does in private, and now we know what he is." His younger brother, Littleton, saw the situation differently. Littleton was 10 when the verdict came down. He didn't understand adultery or hypocrisy or why his mother cried into her pillow at night. He only knew that his father still read to him before bed, still called him champ, still smelled of aftershave and ocean air. When Littleton looked at his father, he saw safety, stability, and honor. He was wrong, of course. When he looked at his elder brother, Kingston, he felt contempt. The brothers were clearly on radically divergent paths. 2 months later, Richard Halstead's Tesla veered off the highway between Torrey Pines and Del Mar, rolling over and over on the sandy beach. The coroner's report cited a software malfunction. The funeral drew senators and CEOs. Kingston stood straight-backed, accepting condolences with a grave nod. But he kept his own feelings and insight to himself. Poor Littleton clung to his mother's hand and began to realize that his childhood had come to an end. That night, as mourners drifted away and Kingston's mother Eleanor retreated upstairs, Littleton overheard his brother speaking to an uncle on the terrace. "Poetic, really. Actions have consequences." Littleton never forgave his brother. Years passed, as they do for the wealthy, quietly, efficiently. Eleanor immediately withdrew from public life, leaving Kingston to assume control of the family trust at the age of 25. Littleton grew into a thin young man with a receding chin and hesitant smile. He was always compared to his brother's good looks, sharp intellect, and courtroom confidence. Kingston became a partner in a downtown firm by 30. Littleton drifted through a life without purpose. He tried business school, but failed. He tried venture capital, but failed more obviously. His inheritance insulated him from complete financial disaster, but not from public judgment. At family gatherings, he was spoken to kindly and dismissed quickly. By 2029, Littleton was desperate to prove himself. That was when he met Zora Vale. She was everything he was not: quick-witted, articulate, and devastatingly charming. They met at a coastal fundraiser where she dismantled a city councilman's argument about zoning laws with a smile that suggested amusement rather than effort. Littleton watched, entranced. In a private moment afterwards, she handed him a drink and said, "You don't talk much." After a sip, he replied, "I listen." Zora liked that answer, or at least she pretended to. She learned Littleton's weaknesses quickly: his hunger for validation, his resentment of Kingston, his unresolved grief for a father the world had condemned. She listened as Littleton spoke of injustice, of Kingston's coldness, and how Kingston had used the affair to erase years of his father's good works. Littleton had once said, "Truth matters." Zora tilted her head and said, "Truth is what survives." They married within a year. San Diego's high society was somewhat surprised. At the wedding, Kingston was polite but distant. He offered a brief toast that praised commitment and discretion. Zora noticed the careful wording. She noticed everything. She was a better listener than Littleton. One night, 6 months later, she declared, "It's not fair. Your brother controls the narrative. Your father can't defend himself, and neither can you." Littleton said nothing, but he felt an old anger stir. Soon, he learned that Zora had a plan. She arranged interviews with sympathetic podcasters and online magazines, painting Littleton as the overlooked son, and Kingston as the cold opportunist who had capitalized on his father's scandal. She leaked selectively edited emails from years ago, hinting that Kingston had pushed for harsher legal consequences during the divorce trial. Zora said, "People love a fall from grace, even when it is undeserved." Kingston responded once, publicly, "I will never litigate my family in the media. Some things should remain private." The line went viral. Zora fumed. She was angry when she confronted Littleton. "See, he's positioning himself as the dignified one. We need to hit harder." With Zora's insistence, Littleton authorized legal action. Civil suits, alleging defamation, breach of fiduciary duty, and emotional distress. The lawyers Zora hired were aggressive, expensive, and optimistic. They were also wrong. Legal discovery unearthed facts that Zora hadn't anticipated. Emails emerged that Kingston had written, urging restraint during their father's trial. Financial records showed Kingston, at his own expense, had quietly increased Eleanor's allowance after Richard's death. And there was a letter, written but never sent, in which Kingston admitted that he felt sad that his father had never recovered his reputation after the divorce. The media narrative quickly shifted. One headline read, "Entitled Rich Boy Targets Successful Brother." Zora blamed the lawyers. The lawyers blamed the evidence. Littleton blamed Kingston. The final blow came unexpectedly. During a routine deposition, Kingston's attorney introduced a report that Littleton had never seen. A private investigator's findings from 2020. The report detailed Richard Halstead's final weeks, his fear, his guilt, and one chilling detail. Richard had suspected his car was malfunctioning. He had asked Kingston to have it checked. Kingston agreed, but had insisted that his father stop driving it. Littleton's lawyer objected. The judge allowed the document. Kingston's attorney asked calmly, "And why did your father continue to drive the vehicle, Mr. Halstead?" Littleton's mouth went dry. Kingston spoke with a steady voice, "Because he told me he deserved whatever happened." The courtroom was silent. Outside, Zora stared at Littleton as if seeing him for the first time. She spoke flatly. "You didn't know." Littleton shook his head. The case collapsed within a week. The lawsuits were dismissed. The media and podcasters moved on, as they always did, leaving Littleton and Zora exposed, ridiculed, and worse, eventually ignored. Investors withdrew. Friends stopped calling. Eventually, Zora filed for divorce. It happened soon after their last appeal failed. As she was packing her suitcase, she snapped at Littleton. "I need a partner, not a liability." He watched her drive away, understanding at last that love had never been part of the arrangement. Months later, Littleton sat alone in a small beachfront rental, far from the Halstead estate. His inheritance was diminished but intact. His reputation was not. Kingston found him there one evening. He arrived unannounced. Littleton said, "I wondered if you'd ever come." Kingston nodded. "I wondered if you'd let me in." They sat in silence on a tiny balcony, the Pacific waves roaring below. Littleton summoned his courage to say, "I hated you." Kingston stared at the ocean and muttered under his breath, "I know." Littleton accused him. "You were happy when Dad died." Kingston closed his eyes. "No. I was relieved he wouldn't hurt anyone else, including himself." Littleton laughed weakly. "That's worse." Kingston pursed his lips. "Maybe, but it's honest." Then he handed Littleton an envelope. Littleton frowned. "What's this?" Kingston turned toward his younger brother. "It's Dad's last letter to me. He asked me to give it to you when you were ready." Littleton opened it with trembling hands. Old man Richard's handwriting was familiar, looping and slightly shaky.
He offered his advice to Kingston. He said, "Take care of your little brother. He's stronger than he appears to be." Littleton looked up, but Kingston was already walking away. For the first time, Littleton understood that his true failure was not that he had lost, but that he had never truly tried to see clearly what was going on until it was too late. And in San Diego, where the sun still shone on broken empires, that was the cruelest twist of all.